Hello, welcome to your favorite health program here on Ebru TV, which comes your way every Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. With me, your host, Purity Musel. Now, globally, burns, or about 265 people die every year from burns complications, and also burns globally has been proven to be a really public health problem. Now, today on the show, we focus on burns. And just remember, those who survive burns, most of them end up with long life complications, disabilities, and so forth. In studio, we have a team of experts, including a plastic surgeon, who will be telling us how do we prevent, how do we treat burns. We also have a representative from the Kenya Power Limited company who will be telling us what exactly happens. Research has shown that most burns are electrical burns, but most importantly, we have an expert who will be telling us some of the safety measures that ought to be taken. But children are more vulnerable into getting these burns. That is what we will be focusing on. Feel free to be part of the show by calling us live. The number will be displayed right at the bottom of your screen. Use the hashtag MyDoctor to speak to us on Twitter at Ebru TV Kenya and at Purity_Museo. Once again, you're watching My Doctor Show. My name is Purity Museo. For now, I'll ask you to sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. So on this first part of the show, we are joined by Dr. Benjamin Wabwire, who is a plastic surgeon, and also Gertrude Katula. She is a burn survivor. She will be telling us what exactly happened, and the doctor will be telling us what are some of the burns or the degrees of burn we have and how does it happen. Now, help me welcome my guest, Dr. Wabwire and Gertrude. Thank you so much for making time for us, and welcome to the show.
Thank you, Purity.
Yes, right. And Doc, let me begin with you, beginning with the basics. When we talk about burns, what exactly are we talking about?
Burns are a type of wounds, a break in the skin caused by many things, from flames to hot fluids or liquids to chemicals, friction like you fell on a hard ground, and many other things.
All right. And I do understand we have different categories or degrees of burns. How do you classify burns? I know there is the first, second, and also the more serious burns that bring a lot of complications, lifelong complications. Doc, just tell us before that, how serious you are, a plastic surgeon from Kenyatta National Hospital, just from your day-to-day interactions with your patients, how serious, how common would you say burns are in the country?
Yeah, we usually, in plastic surgery, we usually say that burns is one of those conditions where all of us will get it. It's just the severity which differs from one person to another. And those with the severe ones will definitely turn up in hospital. So we usually classify them in terms of how much of the skin area is involved. So we call it the burn surface area. And also how deep the burn has gone from the surface of the skin towards the deeper tissues. So if you have like what we call first-degree burn, those are basically like sunburns. So they won't bother you a lot. You'll get a little bit of discomfort and peeling of the skin after a few days, but you'll be fine.
Right. But then do we see any complications from the first? Just first tell us the number of, or what type of burns do we have in the first degree? And you said we have first, second, and third?
Yeah.
That's right. So when we talk about first degree burns, what exactly are we talking about? What are some of the burns that are included in the first degree burns?
So first degree burns, like I said, very superficial. They involve the topmost layer of the skin. Commonly, there are sunburns. If you go sunbathing, if you are light-skinned, or sometimes even for the dark-skinned, you stay in the sun for too long and you're not used to it, you'll get it in a sun-exposed area. But you can also get it if you are exposed to a flame, but for a very, very transient short period, such that only the top layer of the skin that usually comes off with time is affected.
Right.
So they are usually not a big problem.
Not a big problem.
They will heal on their own within 6, 5 days.
All right. And now, Katula, welcome to the show. We are talking about burns, and the doctor is telling us we have different 3 categories, first, second, and third degree of burns. Maybe you would tell us what exactly happens and where do you fall in the 3 categories that the doctor is talking about?
Thank you. Third degree burn. Okay, maybe I can tell my story
exactly
first.
What happened.
Okay, I got burned on 1987 when I was 3 years old. I was laying by the side of fire because I was feeling unwell, and then it was also cold for me. So when the 3-stone fire, you know, the Shaguan, the firewood came out, and the fire was not too much. I don't know what happened, but I found myself that the dress had already burned. So there was nobody that could help me because the only person that could was 7 years old, and that was my aunt. And then my cousin was 3 years old.
The fire?
I didn't. The fire came out.
Right.
Yeah. So there was nobody that could have helped me because my aunt was 7 years old and my cousin was 3 years old. So when I got burned, I went to hide somewhere. When they found me, they just poured water on me and called people to help me.
And which part? Maybe a viewer may be asking, she's talking about having a burn but they cannot see. Maybe which part was affected?
Okay, my burns are hidden right from here to here, including one of my breasts that was totally burnt until there is no nipple.
Yeah. Okay. Doc, let's continue with maybe the second and the third degree. And first, just before you get to the second, what she is explaining, does it fall under the second or the third degree burns?
What she's explaining is probably what you call mixed. So you will have partly second degree and partly third degree.
Yeah.
Yes.
So when we talk about second, what are type of burns that fall into the category of second degree burns?
Second degree burns can be caused by any of the things we said, but it involves the entire thickness of the skin. So both the outer covering and a little bit of the inner one, but it doesn't reach the fat. Below our skin, there is a layer of fat. So a second degree burn would involve the whole skin, but it will not burn the fat. So when they heal, if they are what we would call a deep second degree, they will always heal with scarring.
Right.
If they are second degree but a little bit towards the outside, what we call superficial second degree, they will heal but they may not leave significant scarring.
And you said for the first degree, it's caused by sunburns, and it's not really something that you should worry about because they heal on their own. But now when you talk about the second degree, what are some of the possible causes for this?
Yeah, second degree, the most common cause will be open flames or dry fire. That's by far the most common we see. But you can also get them from chemicals. People get acids or alkalis thrown at them in salt, oil, hot oil. And in some cases, of course, things like electricity or electrocution. And in extremes of temperatures, like people who are exposed to very low temperatures from like ice or frost, they may not be common in our setup, but they do happen.
They do happen. All right, keep talking to us. Our topic of discussion today is burns, and in studio right now we have Dr. Benjamin Wabwire, who is a plastic surgeon, and also we do have Katula Gertrude, who is a burn survivor, telling us what exactly happens, and the doctor just taking us through some of the burns that we have and how they can be treated. Of course, later on we'll be looking at the treatment options. But remember, we'll also be joined by a representative from the Kenya Power Limited company to just tell us what, how, and also also someone from the safety control organization to just tell us how do we prevent burns. Keep talking to us. The call line is displayed right at the bottom of your screen. Use the hashtag #MyDoctor to speak to us on Twitter at Ebru TV Kenya and at Purity_Museo. Now, Katula, let me engage you once again. You said that when you're getting the burn, you didn't have people that could help you at that particular point. So how did you come out of it? What exactly happens? Because you said that you went to hide somewhere. Did you just take yourself up? Because you said you were 3 years old. What exactly happens, and at what point did you get to the hospital?
Okay, now my aunt came. My cousin came and found me there. So she called my aunt, and my aunt poured water on me. Then they called neighbors that came and rushed me to a nearby dispensary. So I spent one night at the dispensary. Then the following day I was taken to Machakos General, where I spent around 6 months. So I was then transferred to Nazareth Hospital. Yeah.
All right. And maybe you would say, from what the doctor is explaining, the seriousness of the burns, and what are some of the complications that came with the burn?
Okay, like my belly has been totally burned. And it's very tight. I was being told that the skin was almost done with the fire. So I had to be grafted. One side of my leg has been cut so that the meat would be used for the grafting. Yeah.
All right. And that one seems somehow very serious burn that she went through. Now, let's get to the 3rd degree, because, Doc, what you're explaining about the second looks really serious. So when you talk about 3rd degree, now, what kind of a burn is this really?
Now, 3rd degree is what she pointed to when she talked about her termium, or the whole skin got. Yeah. So in 3rd degree, the entire skin is burnt, but in addition to that, also the fat beneath it, and in some cases the muscles will also be burnt. And when that happens, you realize that most of the things like nerves that bring us sensation or feelings, and vessels which bring blood to most areas in our body, they will be in that layer. So most of them will also be burnt. So by the time you're getting to 3rd degree, if you involve like a hand or a limb, you could easily lose it, because you could burn those vessels as well, and the nerves. So by the time you're getting to 3rd degree, things are pretty bad. If it's affecting like the chest or the tummy, someone can have breathing problems as well.
And Doc, we're talking about burns which directly involve the skin. First, just take us through the functions of the skin, and once maybe you are burnt, let's say it's 2nd and 3rd, because you say the 1st is not that serious, what are some of the complications that can come with that?
The biggest problem with burning our skin is that we take it for granted, but the skin is the largest organ that we have actually, and it's our first line of defense to the environment around us. So when you burn it, then first of all you've taken away your first line of defense. Then the second thing is that depending on the percentage, then the other functions that it does, like helping in controlling how much water, salt you lose through evaporation, how much vitamin D you make. So those things will, if you destroy the skin, then you lose that control of regulating how much fluid you are losing through evaporation. And depending on the percentage, your kidneys might not be able to cope. So you find that when the amount of skin burnt, what we call the percentage goes up, then the survival reduces up to a point where the survival is almost zero.
Yeah. And Katula, I understand there's a lot of stigma that comes when you are banned, especially in a place that is exposed. For you, maybe just tell us, did you face any kind of stigma, maybe from your friends, the fact that you had to go through grafting, you know, and also you said that your skin was totally, maybe your relationship, I know you're still young, but is there at some point any stigma that you face as a person?
Okay, currently no. But when I was growing, from when I was out of the hospital until 2008, when I was a young teenager, I didn't realize anything. In fact, life was smooth. Then when my breasts were growing, that's when I began realizing that I'm different.
Yeah.
Because one of them has been pulled down by the scars. So a girl commented, she was talking to her mom, and then she said, "Mom, ona ule ako na matiti moja kwa tumbo." You know, then I felt bad. And I was only 13 years old, 14 years old. So, you know, you can't share it to someone. So I just went home and told my brothers, I just want to die. But then my brothers could not understand. When I was informed to, my fellow classmate asked, "What happened?" I said, "We were taking a shower."
You were in boarding school?
Yeah. In a girls' school. So I said, "I got burned." And then, you know, she also saw the breast. She said, "Huyu haezi pendwa, hata hizi oleka. Sasa hata tazama mtoto anakaa aje." And then, you know, my self-esteem went completely down.
Yeah.
I could not remove my sweater, or if I'm removing my sweater, then I was to be in a windbreaker. Because, you know, the windbreaker can at least hide something.
Yeah.
I kept being a person that has low self-esteem until on 2016, when I began my program. It's called Beyond Burns and Disfigurement. So that's when at least I had to share my story, and I could somehow hide some of the parts. And then my young brother used to tell me, "Aki, get rid, because you think hatukupendi. If I grow up, I'll marry someone that has scars just for you."
Yeah.
So that you can know that you're loved and that scars are nothing. So, you know, you cannot tell your brother all that you feel, because one thing, he's younger than you. Nikakuwa share the story to the other burn survivors, and then they feel motivated.
Yeah.
So it got to a point that now I didn't care who says what or who judges me. I was just okay with sharing my story and motivating others.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Doc, there's a lot of stigma that come with burns, especially if they are, for her it was so much, and it's a place where it's not exposed, but each time she exposes, then lots of stigma. So is there a way, you are a plastic surgeon, is there a way burns can be completely, even the third-degree burns can be completely corrected? Maybe take us through the treatment process, especially for the second and third-degree burns.
Yeah, the most important thing when you get a burn, of course, is that the wound you sustain has to heal. So our initial management is usually to make sure the person survives. So if it's a big area, and then we make sure we've protected you from infection, or we've taken care of the wound so that it heals. If we need to do skin grafts, like she mentioned, we do them. Sometimes we have to do more complex procedures than that. But the biggest challenge, like she's mentioning, is what we call rehabilitation.
Yeah. Because
someone's life changes. They didn't have a scar, now they have a scar. It could be on their face, or it could be hidden. Or a part of the body, like if it's the fingers, they could get deformed. So in the rehabilitative phase, ideally, we should have several people on board. The surgeons, like us, would try and correct the deformities that have occurred by what we call scar revision, or contracture releases, like what she's mentioned about her breast being stuck in the wrong place. So we can try and reposition that. But it's not possible to eliminate scarring. So our aim is usually to improve the scars and make them more acceptable. But other than that, in ideal setting, you need to have a psychologist on board. You need to have what we call occupational therapists on board so that they help with minimizing the severity of the scars. And also, if it involves like the hands, to teach them how to use whatever remains. Like, remember I said you can lose a finger, you can lose a hand if the burn is severe. So the occupational therapist would help in helping someone to get back to work. Some people who get like facial burns, they are unable to go back to work because of what she's mentioning, social stigma. And someone has to work with them to help them appreciate that they can. It's just the scar, but they are still who they were. The brain is still there. So that they accept their situation and go back to work. So it is a continuous process. I think what we are lacking is that maybe because of financial constraints, those support systems are not so well developed. So we tend to do a lot of the clinical work, hospital setting, and then when somebody goes home like she did, it's like the story has ended. But then they continue suffering. So what we need is, other than the prevention that my colleagues will talk about, the other big thing that we need is support systems after treatment.
Yeah, and they will be telling us more about the support system, but we are almost winding up for the first part of the show. Maybe Katula, just tell us how you are able to wake up or overcome the stigma in just a minute, and now decided to come up with, you said you have a program that you run that supports survivors of burns. Just tell us in a minute about it.
Okay, it was on 2015. In 2015, when I was in second year, that year, and then I didn't have school fees for the semester. So because my mom was my mom had been I don't know how to put it, but alikuwa amefutwa kazi, aliambiwa tu amesimamishwa kidogo, and then now I had to take care of the family, being that I have some businesses that I do. And being the firstborn now, I had to call off the semester. I'm a student at KU to take care of my mom and my brothers. I think my mom also got stressed up until she got sick. So she could not help us. When on September 2016, the breast that now has been burned got cut. I don't know really what happened, but I just woke up to find it bleeding. And you know, I didn't have money to take me to the hospital, so my aunt helped me with 500 and took me to Awendo Hospital, where they referred me to Kenyatta Hospital. We thought we cannot afford to go to Kenyatta Hospital, so maybe let's try doing something at home. So she could wash me and apply some Vaseline for some time, then it got well. After that, I told her, Auntie, I just want to begin a program for the burn survivors because I feel nobody else can understand. Even when I tell Mom what I go through, sometimes she just says, Mwanangu, it shall be well. And then, you know, it's not enough. When you tell someone else, like my aunt, maybe you've talked to someone about your scars and then they go silent or they run away. I tell my aunt, I just don't know what happens. I remember a day I told my mom, my grandmother, Shosho Aki, mimi, sitawahi kuelewa, because I do not imagine what I'm going through right now, and then iyo kitu ikuje kuhappen kama I have a husband, and then wanze kunisuta. Then my shosh could not tell me anything. She just said, you're a miracle. Whatever happens, it's okay. So when I began the program, I began by going to Nazareth Hospital because that was the place that I was treated at. I talked to some of the burn survivors. The self-esteem was not high, was still not high for me, so I could not share all of the story. I went to Kenyatta Hospital and I found very many burn victims, and then others seemed to be worse than me.
Yeah.
So I said, then at least I should appreciate life. That life is the biggest gift here on earth.
Yeah.
Without leaf, you're not there. Without life, you're not there. And then I said, then our bodies are our soul carriers. If I do not have the body, then I'm not alive. Also, I should take care of myself and my body, because you know, when you do not love yourself, sometimes you neglect your body. Yeah.
All right, and now I'll have to let you go, sadly, because of time. That's it for the first part of the show. Dr. Benjamin Wabwire and Katula, thank you so much for coming, and thank you for being a soldier and supporting the burn survivors out there. We appreciate your work, and we're looking forward to having you once again on the show to talk more about it. But when we come back, we still have more guests lined up for you. We have a guest from the Kenya Power Limited Company. Remember, research has shown that most burns are electrical burns. He will be telling us what exactly happens, and also we have Kate Wanjeri, who will be telling us exactly who is an expert rather on safety control. She will be telling us, how do we prevent, what are some of the preventive measures for burns, and when a burn or fire breaks, what exactly happens? What are some of the first steps that you ought to take? That is when we come back for the second part of the show. Keep talking to us on Twitter at Ebru TV Kenya and at Purity_Museo. Use the hashtag #MyDoctor. You can also call us live, because we are live on our studios here. The number will be displayed right at the bottom of your screen. First, we want to take a breather in that discussion on burns, managing burns, the preventive measures, the treatment options there are, and also how do we overcome the stigma that come with burns, especially the third-degree burns. We continue when we come back. Stay tuned. Now, welcome back to the second and the last part of the show. But in this show, we have a series of sections that we'll be talking about. Now, we are joined by Michael Gitau, who is a consultant, a safety consultant. With him, he will be telling us what are some of the first steps that you ought to take once a fire breaks. That is a discussion we are having with him in a few moments. But remember, we are live. Call us. The number is displayed right at the bottom of your screen. We will be glad to receive your call, right? And also respond to your concerns. Welcome, Michael Gitau, to My Doctor. And let's just get straight to it. When research has shown that most of the burns occur, of course, because of fires that break, you are a safety consultant. Just tell us, when fire breaks, or what are some of the safety measures that we ought to take as parents, because also children are more vulnerable into getting these burns. And once the fire breaks, how do you put it out? You know?
Great. Now, well, for the fire now to break out, I'll talk about how does it come about. Yes. There must be 3 ingredients that end up now resorting to fire. One of the ingredients is fuel. Fuel is a combustible material. What can burn could be liquid, could be a solid. Also, it can be a gas. Then again, you have in the same element, you have now the oxygen, which is a key part. Even ourselves, we can't survive without oxygen. It is very common. Then the other thing that is again needed in that fire, again to occur, having that you have now the fuel, you have the oxygen, and the other thing that you need from it now. Once now you have the fire, what do you do? So of course, the first thing we need to say is to get out of the house. If you're in the house or if it's a workplace, that is what the first thing that you need to do. We try as much to tell people not to carry a lot of things from as they're getting out of the house, because what happens is most of the time when you're carrying most of the time valuables, you are likely to trip down or they drop down, and when people are coming in again, they will step on them and they end up again tripping and getting injured. Now, so that would be the first thing, that is evacuation phase. And you alert other people that now there is a fire occurrence. That is by shouting fire, using whatever the language you can. It could be Swahili, whichever the language that people understand.
But most people, the first step they want to take is to try and put out the fire.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, the thing is, when you're fighting the fire and you do not have the skills or the technique on how to fight it, you can end up becoming injured. How? For example, talk about we have different classes of fire. Classes of fire meaning what? The fire could be as a resultant of electricity. It could be a resultant of gas. It could be a resultant of cooking oil. It could be combustible materials and the like. So if you don't know which kind of a fire is, and you end up maybe using wrong fire extinguisher for the wrong fire, then that happen out to be a spillover. And now, and again, in homes, not many homes they have the right fire extinguishers. So the first we always tell people is just assess their area. Then if you're in a position now to move out. If you have the right fire extinguisher, then fight that fire if you are able to. And the other thing is when you're evacuating out of the house, because most of the time when you have the fire in your house is that there is a buildup of gases in your house. That's what kills people fast. So when you're going out, we tell people now it is better for you to crawl, or you just, you know, walk down. Don't walk facing when you're straight. When you stoop, it is better because oxygen is low, but a lot of gases are up in the air. So that's how let's
assume it's a home setting, and of course most common fires that we see are out from either a gas or even electrical fires. So when, for example, because most people will either use water to try put it out, or even a cloth, as in just all sort of things. Simple steps on how when a gas explodes or when there is an electrical fire, what would you do if you don't have the fire extinguisher with you? What would you do?
All right. Now, like I said, the first thing you need to do is to recognize or what caused the fire. Well, like I said, if it is an electrical fire, the first thing you'd want to go is to switch off the main. So that now you do not have the surge now. You're not going to have an escalation. Then if it is now, for example, it is sufuria that is on fire, so what are you likely to use? Well, you could get there is a fire blanket meant for fighting the fire, but because commonly not many of us that we have it, so what could you do? You can get the normal blanket, but douse it in water, get it in a basin of water, then you cover the sufuria with it. Those are some of the steps that you can use at home. But for those with fire extinguishers, then you can go ahead and use what? The fire extinguishers. Yes.
All right, Gitao, so much to learn from you, but we have to let you go. But this discussion, of course, we continue with your colleague, Catherine Wanjeru, to just understand some of the preventive measures. But thank you so much for your time. We will have you once again. It's very important to talk about fires and how to prevent and put them out. But thank you so much. We appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Yes, allow me to take another breather. But when we come back, we'll be joined by Kate, who is also, who deals with safety when it comes to fire. But most importantly, we have someone from the Kenya Power Limited Company. He will be telling us how do you deal with those electrical appliances in your house. That's when we come back in just a short moment. You are still watching My Doctor Show, and our topic of discussion today is burns, managing burns. Now, joining me, we have a person from the Kenya Power Limited Company. You want to ask him a few questions regarding how do you deal with your electricity in the house? How do you go about it, the switches and all that? He's the right person to be answering those questions. Call us live. The number is displayed right at the bottom of your screen. But we also have Kate, who still deals with safety control. She will be telling us how do we go about it, especially in schools, at homes, when handling your children, or you leave your children at home alone. She will be better placed to answer those questions. You can also call her and ask her a few questions. We are live. This is My Doctor Show. And help me welcome my two special guests, James and Kate. Thank you so much for coming and for making time for us.
Thank you very much.
Let me begin with you, James. When we talk, you are from Kenya Power.
Yes, please.
And there's so many accidents that come about with the electrical. We have so many electrical burns cases that have been recorded in the country. What exactly happens? Are we going to fault this electricity in the house? Should we stop using electricity? Or how do you advise, how do we go about using electricity into our houses, switches and all that?
Thank you very much. Electricity, as you know, is a very good, reliable source of energy. However, if it is not properly used, it can bring a lot of consequences. In terms of dangers of electricity, we can look at it from two perspectives, what we call indoor perspective and outdoor perspective. With regard to indoor perspective, where most of the accidents happen, is that, one, it's about switches. As you know, electricity and water never come together. Most people will touch socket with wet hands and therefore end up getting electrocuted. The other cause is overloading of sockets. You have people inserting all gadgets, a lot of gadgets on one socket, and that causes overheating and can cause fire. The other one is poor wiring in the houses. You get all sorts of electricians. Some of them are quacks doing wiring in the houses, and that causes fire as well as burns. And maybe the other key one is children and electricity. Sometimes we leave keys in the house, electrical gadgets there, and keys, you know, with electricity is very dangerous. And sometimes they insert nails, keys, and another item in the socket. So those are some of the main causes of electricity.
And when, for example, some houses are just next to some of these transformers, Just tell us more about it. Are we at a risk when we live near these wires and all that? And now also when you are leaving the house, for example, you want to leave some of your sockets on, for example, when you're using a fridge and all that. What's your advice when, for example, you're traveling and you're leaving children in the house? What are some of the options that there are to just ensure that your children are going to be safe?
Thank you. We say that you should never leave children alone and unattended without anyone looking over them or looking after them. But we're talking about now outdoor causes of electrical accidents. Number one is poor wiring. You get all sorts of people doing wiring. That causes a lot of burns as well as fires. Secondly, we have people doing illegal connections. If you go to mainly informal settlements in Nairobi and other areas, you have people trying to connect themselves to electricity, and that causes a lot of fires. The third one is tree cutting. You've got people, especially in rural areas, where people cut trees, and when trees goes there, they have water in them. When they fall on power lines, that causes accidents. The other one is people building either under the power lines or very close to power lines. You go to areas like Nairobi, Kariobangi, for example, you'll find balconies of houses very close to power lines. So that is called a breaching of clearance. That distance is less, and therefore people come into contact with electricity. That causes burns.
And you will tell us what you are doing as Kenya Power to prevent that. But Kate, first, do you agree with what James is saying? And then number two, just tell us, are our parents too, can I use the word careless when it comes to taking care of your children? Because research shows that children are more vulnerable and more cases for children are really rising who are getting these burns. What would you say about that, Kate?
Thank you very much. I would absolutely agree with my colleague, James. Sometimes, most of the times, we leave our children unattended to. I think the previous guest, Gertrude, told you that she got burnt when she was 3, and most burns happen especially when children are very small. So what we are encouraging is, can we be a little bit more careful? If you have to leave your children unattended to, let somebody be there to look after them. If there's something that you're cooking in the house, make sure that the children are not near where either the stove or a jiko is near. So let us be a little bit more careful with our children. Yes. Okay, and the first week of September is Burns Awareness Week. What are we focusing on this time round? It's a Burn Awareness Week, a week whereby we are focusing on safety on fires and safety on burns, because it's becoming alarming when it comes to the burns that are occurring in our country. So we are trying to emphasize on sensitization on the Burns Awareness Week. Yes. And Kate, where would you say is the gap in terms of, because trust you me, there are so many cases for burns. When you walk into national hospitals, public hospitals, you find so many victims of burns. Where would you say is the gap? Are we doing enough as a country to just ensure that we are safe, you know? I think we've really taken safety a little bit on the sideline. Yes. We are not emphasizing on safety so much, especially in schools. We are not taking the precaution of teaching our children. And even the parents don't even know what to do in case of a fire. So we want to sensitize, especially the primary school students and even the secondary school students. On what to do in case of a fire? Or what to do in case of a fire. Just try to tell them something then. You can tell them something. What do I do in case of a fire at school or at home for parents and for students? What we want to emphasize is, if you teach the children, they will take the message back at home. Because sometimes getting a hold of the parents in one group, it becomes a big challenge. And Kenya Power is also taking an initiative of getting sensitization on the village. You know, you call the chiefs and the DEO, the DOs, so that at least we can get reach to even the people in and whatever areas of slums. And Kate, allow me to be your student. Yes, just please. Let me know, Purity, once fire breaks, this is the first thing that you ought to do, and just use that camera. First of all, I think my colleague Michael said, first you have to shout in any language, Kiswahili, Kikuyu, Kikamba, Kijaluo, whichever language you have to. If you are able to extinguish the fire in the initial stage, you can always, you can try it. But if you cannot, please do not try to extinguish when a fire has escalated.
You do not want to lose your property.
You wouldn't. Hata kama umewacha 100,000 in the house and the house is burning, please can you run out? Forget about the money or whatever you have left in the house. Just run out.
Yes.
Yes.
And James, as we wind up, what are you doing as Kenya Power? Because you're saying that there are wrong connections, we have quirks. So what are you doing to just ensure that, you know, because when that happens, everyone will say it's Kenya Power that is not doing enough. So what are you doing to just ensure or assure Kenyans that everything is going to be okay when using electricity?
Thank you very much. Maybe before I answer your question, I want to talk about the Burns Awareness Week.
Yes.
There's one thing that Catherine did not mention. One is that the theme of this week is Zuia Moto, Zuia Gharama. We want to show people
Zuia
that
Moto,
Zuia Moto,
Zuia
Zuia Gharama.
Right.
Show people that if you allow burns to happen, fires to happen, and burns, the cost is too expensive. I think the doctor may have talked about the millions that people spend on burns. It's expensive, so we are telling people Zuia Moto, Zuia Gharama. Fires are expensive. Coming to your question on what Kenya Power is doing, one is we're doing awareness, public awareness, and this, taking part in the Burns Awareness Week is one way of doing awareness. Secondly, we are partnering with the institutions of learning, the schools, where we are doing sensitization to pupils. And we are also working with the Ministry of National Security, Interior and National Coordination, where we call chiefs together in forums and sensitize the chiefs so that the chiefs take the messages to the villages. Also using mass media, print media, and all other ways that we can reach to the people. So one is awareness. Secondly, we are emphasizing on there are programs like Last Mile Connectivity Project. That project is now making electricity affordable to people. One of the reasons why people were going to illegal connection is because of, you know, electricity was perceived as very expensive. But now the government and the company have come up with programs like Last Mile program, where you connect power at a very affordable rate. For the slum areas and what are called informal settlements, there's a program that is called GPOPA. It's a partnership project between Kenya Power and World Bank, where electricity is supplied at very affordable rate, and that's one of the ways. And also encouraging people to engage people who are competent, people who are licensed by the Energy Regulatory Commission when they're doing wiring. One thing about accidents that involve electricity is some of them happen when actually touch someone in contact with electricity. Whenever someone is in contact with electricity, many times they will get stuck. Either get stuck or be thrown away from electricity. So once you touch there and you are stuck, in order to help that person, we, as Michael said, you first of all find the point of the source of electricity, you isolate or switch off the source. If you cannot reach the source, you try to push that person away from the electricity using what you call a poor conductor. You can use a dry piece of wood, you can use a dry towel, dry cloth, you can use a plastic chair, anything, but never touch that person in contact with electricity. Yeah.
Okay, and where will this event be? Because you said it's from next week, the Burns Awareness Week, maybe. Where should people come?
It's being, the venue is Kenyatta National Hospital, KNH, but there will be walk in the city. There will also be media events. It's a whole week of activities, but the host, the main venue is Kenyatta National Hospital. All
right, James and Kate, that's all the time we had for the show, but thank you so much for quite a discussion. It was really important. We appreciate you coming, and we'll also bring you back to talk more about it, especially on the Burns Awareness Week.
Thank you.
But that's it for now. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for keeping us company. You have been watching My Doctor Show with me, Purity Museo. The show continues tomorrow, same place, same time. Do keep safe.